Sila lumen omentielvo. A star shines on the hour of our meeting.
They called him the brightest of the Valar, the most gifted, the most curious, the first to fall. Before the name Morgoth was ever whispered in fear, before the fortresses of Angband rose from black stone, before Sauron bowed to anyone, there was Melkor. He was not born to destroy, he was made to illuminate. Among the Ainur, none possessed more knowledge, more might, or more ambition. His voice was the loudest in the music of the Ainur. His thoughts reached further than the stars. He saw the world before it was formed, and longed not just to see it, but to own it. But in that longing, something broke. He searched for the Flame Imperishable. He wandered into the void, and when he returned, his song no longer danced with the others. It devoured. This is the tale not of evil, but of fall, of pride that eclipsed wisdom, of a light so bright it blinded itself. In Tolkien's world, evil is not a force born from chaos. It is a will that chooses to turn away. And Melkor was the first to make that choice. In this episode of the Valinor Archives, we unveil the tragedy of Melkor, the original Dark Lord, the source of sorrow, and the one whose fall changed the fate of Arda forever. This is where the shadow began. This is the story of the fall, of Melkor. To understand the fall, we must first understand the height. Melkor was not simply another Valar, he was the greatest among them. From the very thought of Ilúvatar, Melkor emerged with more gifts than any other Ainur. His mind was vast, and his hunger for knowledge was unmatched. Where others delighted in harmony, he questioned. Where they saw beauty, he sought to understand its source and expand it. He was fire, and he was light. He was motion, and he was form. In the great music, his voice rang out louder, deeper, and more complex than all others. He was not only powerful, he was brilliant. Ilúvatar loved him no less for his ambition. For a time, Melkor's strength lifted the song itself, adding richness, surprise, and depth. He explored parts of the music that no other dared touch. And in doing so, he glimpsed visions of things no other Ainur perceived. The other Valar admired him, but also feared his intensity. He challenged their ideas. He demanded answers to things even Ilúvatar left unsaid. He was not content with beauty. He wanted mastery. It is said that he yearned to bring new life into being, not to destroy, but to create something uniquely his. He saw the children of Ilúvatar, elves and men, in the vision. And he envied them. For though they were fragile, they carried a spark beyond even his own comprehension. Melkor desired that spark. He wanted to shape life himself, to hold the flame imperishable. But the flame dwells only with Ilúvatar, and that truth became a wound in Melkor's pride. Still, he might have remained noble. He might have been the greatest builder of the world, the strongest guardian of Arda. He might have become the star around which others gathered. But as the music continued, something in him hardened. What began as brilliance turned into competition. What began as curiosity turned into control. He began to see the others not as brothers and sisters, but as rivals. He began to see Ilúvatar not as creator, but as obstacle. And thus, the shadow began, not as malice, but as misplaced greatness. This was Melkor before the name Morgoth, the brightest of the Valar, and the one who fell the furthest. At the center of Melkor's fall lies one desire, the Flame Imperishable. It is the secret fire, the spark of true creation. It is through the flame that Ilúvatar gives life, independent will, thought, spirit. And Melkor wanted it. He searched the vast emptiness of the void for it, alone. While other Ainur delighted in the music, Melkor walked beyond the borders of harmony. He longed to do what only Ilúvatar could do, bring things into being, not by command, but by his own will. But the flame cannot be found. It dwells with Ilúvatar alone. And when Melkor returned from his search, something in him had changed. He brought with him a restlessness, a silence that echoed louder than any note. He began to sing again, but this time he sang alone. He inserted new themes into the music, dissonant, grand, full of power and beauty, but not aligned with the harmony. At first it was only variation, but slowly it became opposition. The music trembled. Some of the Ainur faltered, confused. Others followed Melkor, drawn by his might. The harmony broke. The melody fractured. And yet, Ilúvatar did not silence him. Instead, he wove a second theme, gentle, patient, deeper than the first. It countered Melkor, embraced his chaos, and transformed it into new beauty. Where Melkor struck violently, Ilúvatar responded with sorrow and strength. But Melkor would not yield. He grew louder, darker, more aggressive. His song became a storm of fire and pride. A third theme rose, soft and mysterious, filled with humility, hope, and sorrow. And still, Melkor tried to drown it, until Ilúvatar stood. With a single chord, he brought the music to an end, and said, "No theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me." Melkor's rebellion had failed, but not been erased. His discord had been woven in, and that, perhaps, was his deepest wound. He had tried to create alone, but all he did, his glory, his pride, even his defiance, still served Ilúvatar's purpose. He had sought to be original, and found himself part of a greater design. From that moment, Melkor no longer sought to create. He sought to dominate. He would not share in the shaping of Arda. He would own it. And when the Ainur entered the world they had sung, Melkor came with them. But he did not come as a friend. The others descended with wonder and joy. Melkor descended with a plan. He claimed vast lands of Arda for himself. He brought fire where there should be forests. He froze rivers meant to flow. He darkened the skies to veil the stars Varda would later make. Where Ulmo shaped seas, Melkor stirred storms. Where Aule built mountains, Melkor shattered them. Where Yavanna grew forests, Melkor withered them with cold. And still, he was not banished. For in power, he was their equal, perhaps even greater. And in Ilúvatar's design, he still had a place. But his rage grew. His loneliness grew. He began to twist lesser spirits to his will, those who would become the Balrogs. He carved fortresses into the north, Utumno, a citadel of iron and fire. And so began the long conflict. The war not of armies, but of will. Between the Valar who wished to shape the world, and Melkor who sought to rule it. He had not found the Flame Imperishable, but he would try to take its light, by force. Melkor no longer sang, he commanded, and what he could not command, he sought to destroy. In the early shaping of Arda, while the other Valar worked together to balance the seas and skies, Melkor acted alone. He twisted their creations. Where Aule raised mountains, Melkor split them. Where Yavanna sowed forests, he scorched the roots. Where Varda's stars were to shine, he sent shadow and smoke. He became a storm upon the world, a force of sabotage, of disruption, of contempt. The Valar endured him at first, hoping that with time he would return to the harmony, that he would remember who he was. But Melkor had chosen power over peace. He built a fortress in the far north, Utumno, the Black Pit. A realm of fire and cruelty, where light was chained and silence screamed. Its gates were forged in hate, its halls echoed with pain. In that place, Melkor took joy not in creation, but in perversion. There, he gathered corrupted spirits, those who feared his wrath or admired his might. Some were once mire, twisted by promises of power. Among them, legends say, was Sauron, who became his most cunning servant. In Utumno, Melkor devised horrors the world had never seen. Poisons that could infect light, storms that tore the skies, beasts forged from nightmare. He began to unravel the very threads of Arda's design. The Valar could not ignore him any longer, and so began the first war of Arda, not with words, not with chords of music, but with thunder, fire, and ruin. Mountains were shattered, oceans boiled, the stars themselves trembled as Arda became a battlefield. It was the first time the Valar stood united against one of their own. Melkor stood alone, yet vast in strength. But in choosing isolation, he severed what made him mighty. He was no longer the greatest of the Valar. He had become something else, a void in the shape of will, a mockery of the light he once bore. The Valar no longer called him Melkor. They gave him a name shaped by grief and rage, Morgoth, the black foe of the world. And from that moment, peace would never again reign while his shadow remained. And so, the mightiest of the Valar became the world's first enemy. Melkor, who could have been the greatest of builders, became the greatest of destroyers. He sought to burn what he could not possess, to twist what he could not create, to rule what he was meant to serve. And in doing so, he gave Middle-earth its first shadow, one that would stretch across ages, through wars, kings, and whispers of fear. But the story does not end here. His rebellion will call the Valar to war. His darkness will awaken ancient power. And from the ruin of his pride, a deeper tragedy will unfold. The flame he could never find, he will try to steal. At the Valinor Archives, we bring you these stories not as forgotten myths, but as living echoes of legend. If this tale moved you, subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and stand with us in the light of memory. Because next, we journey to the first war of Arda, where the harmony of the world will be broken, and the war for its soul will begin.